Ladies and gentlemen, Aylan Kurdi, a framed drawing of his red t-shirt and long blue shorts. The reason of his death is indifference and short-sighted policies. We keep not far for our choices. The gravity of the questions before us impose on all of us to think critically, to learn some hard lessons from the past and to challenge assumptions, to have underpinned too much of the response of the international community so far. The civil society delegates emphatically reject building blocks of migration policy based on prejudice and fear, of wars, barbed wires and prisons, of stereotypes, of us and them. Those are not the only choices possible. Rather than build wars, build a positive legacy for our planet for generations to come. Let's look for long-lasting solutions built on two pillars of successful policy: values and evidence. First, values. We feel a strong sense of hope rising from the encouraging text of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, which now awaits effective partnerships for implementation. This agenda is anchored in values calling for universal respect of human rights. This is how our values are codified. Leave no one behind, and migrants' rights are human rights. Second, evidence, facts, data, views and opinions, the reality of the world in which we live. There is a deceptive and dangerous logic at work with assumption all too often embraced as common wisdom and manipulated by short-sighted politicians. Solutions cannot be constructed on assumptions that are not founded. Unfounded assumptions too often lead to policy responses that criminalize irregular migration, with unnecessary detention, heighten the vulnerability of migrants, and open the door to a wide range of human rights abuses. Migrant policy and its implementation must be rooted both in evidence of the real world in which we live and in the human rights framework. That's not a choice, but a necessity. Ladies and gentlemen, gentle optimism and fierce determination is how we describe the tone of the conversation during the civil society days. We all can do better and have to do better. This is the tone of the energy we engage in the collaboration with states on concrete projects and measurable progress within civil society's 5-year, 8-point action plan that comes from the high-level dialogue in 2013. Not forgetting the importance of migrant women and migrant diaspora everywhere, where evidence resoundingly shows that access to human rights makes all the difference, not just to protection, but to economic human development, social inclusion, and healthier societies. With this gentle optimism and fierce determination, let's acknowledge progress and the need for more ambition. We applaud Somalia for ratifying 2 weeks ago the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the 196th state to do so. The United States is the last remaining state that is yet to ratify the convention. As we have moved to universal global goals with the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, isn't it time for the universal ratification of the Child Rights Convention? We urge all stakeholders to act on the recommendations of the Committee on the Rights of the Child on children in the context of migration, being them separated, unaccompanied, or with their parents. We appreciate governments that are leading the way in applying the recommendations on ending child immigration detention, on family reunification, and on access to justice, health, education, and other services for children. A number of these obligations are particularly relevant to the topics of the Global Forum on Migration and Development 2015. We urge others to follow that lead. Civil society has been working actively with and alongside the Migrants in Countries of Crisis Initiative, the MICIC, led by the United States and the Philippines. after a call for action at the high-level dialogue in 2013. Civil society welcomes this step, but instead of looking only at countries in crisis, civil society calls to look more fully at the migrants in crisis, improving without delay needs first and right-based responses to migrants in distress, in transit, including opportunities for orderly, safe, regular and responsible migration. We also call on all governments to collectively and individually route their response to large influx of asylum seekers and migrants into their territory, particularly at their borders, in their human rights obligations. We urge all governments across the world to increase their efforts to accommodate people in need of protection. 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals and targets refer explicitly to migrants and migration. Other goals and targets also apply. Now, and through March 2016, discussions regarding the translation of targets into national policy, implementation and monitoring of the targets will be ongoing, and thus a continued role taken by civil society. The Domestic Workers' Convention, C189, is quickly becoming the ILO's fastest ratified convention, and although work remains to be done, it offers an advocacy platform for civil society organizations to push governments to make positive policy change that protect the rights of domestic workers, many of them women. Shared norms or shared interests for bilateral cooperation is the rationale to call for ratification of international agreements that would enhance migrant rights and protections, such as the UN Convention on the Protection of Rights of All Migrant Workers and Members of Their Families, and relevant ILO resolutions and conventions. Here is another good choice whose time has come. It's high time for Europe to sign these conventions, together with other main countries of destination. Since the last Global Forum, there has been so much action on addressing issues of recruitment, an area where governments and private business are increasingly recognizing the need to choose reforms and policy changes. Even if at times only on paper at this stage, it illustrates a degree of progress. This is reinforced by strong and steady action by civil society, including migrant workers themselves. To the great surprise of much of the world, hundreds of thousands of ordinary citizens volunteer to help migrants and refugees arriving daily. Underreported and perhaps unexpected, from the Mediterranean to the Pacific and Indian Oceans, in the Middle East, the Americas, civil society, citizens step forward to express concrete solidarity with migrants and refugees. The other side of the coin is choosing to view migrants as somehow undeserving of human rights. Migrants are depicted as invasive by a belligerent vocabulary. People flooding, swamping, jumping the queue, threatening our way of life. The siege mentality fanned by an increasing number of populist leaders and by xenophobic media is disgraceful and dishonest. Society that is truly civil demands a new choice to no longer play with or surrender to such intolerance. The space for civil society is shrinking rapidly worldwide. Since the high-level dialogue, more than 60 countries have passed or drafted laws that curtail the activity of our organizations. The influence exercised by powerful actors that have no democratic legitimacy is increasing, and sometimes with government's complicity. The criminalization of citizens for helping people to migrate safely is unacceptable. We claim a rightful place by demanding genuine participation in governance at local, national, regional and global levels. A place at the decision-making table and co-responsibility. We look forward to the development around the governance of the GFMD, on which, yes, we will contribute to think out of the box. We engage in short paths for a long road in the collaboration with governments, and governments need to take more action. Ladies and gentlemen, The recognition of our humanity can guide us to make the right choices. We are at a tipping point. Are we choosing and tipping in the right direction? Thank you very much.